Question 1. Which approach would be most effective for a CCNP security certified professional tasked with enhancing the security posture of an organization through automation, considering the need for efficient alert management and incident response? Option A. Develop entirely custom automation scripts for every security task, bypassing existing security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platforms to ensure complete control over the codebase. Option B. Immediately deploy comprehensive automation across all security functions, including complex threat hunting and full incident remediation, without prior pilot testing or phased rollout. Option C. Implement a phased automation strategy, beginning with automating repetitive, high-volume tasks like log analysis and initial alert enrichment, before gradually expanding to more complex response actions. Option D. Focus exclusively on automating the detection of security threats, leaving all subsequent incident response and remediation processes to manual execution by the security team. Correct answer is C. Implement a phased automation strategy, beginning with automating repetitive, high-volume tasks like log analysis and initial alert enrichment, before gradually expanding to more complex response actions. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in modern security operations: the need to efficiently and effectively manage a growing volume of security alerts. Relying solely on manual analysis is unsustainable and prone to human error, leading to delayed incident response and potential breaches. The challenge lies in selecting an automation strategy that balances speed, accuracy, and compliance with operational requirements. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased approach to security automation, starting with well-defined, high-volume, low-complexity tasks like log aggregation and initial alert triage, represents best professional practice. This allows the security team to build confidence, refine playbooks, and demonstrate value incrementally. It aligns with the principle of start small, scale smart in technology adoption. This approach minimizes disruption, allows for thorough testing and validation of automation scripts and workflows, and ensures that the automation is aligned with existing security policies and operational procedures, thereby maintaining compliance and reducing the risk of introducing new vulnerabilities through poorly implemented automation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Attempting to automate all security tasks simultaneously without proper planning or phased implementation is a recipe for failure. This approach risks overwhelming the team, introducing complex bugs into critical security processes, and potentially creating new security gaps if automation is not thoroughly tested. It fails to adhere to prudent project management and risk mitigation principles, which are implicitly expected in professional security roles. Developing custom automation scripts for every single security task without leveraging existing, well-vetted security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platforms or frameworks is inefficient and increases the maintenance burden. While custom scripting has its place, a wholesale approach neglects the benefits of standardized tools that offer pre-built integrations, robust reporting, and community support, potentially leading to inconsistent security posture and increased technical debt. This can also lead to compliance issues if custom scripts do not adequately log actions or adhere to data handling regulations. Focusing solely on automating detection without addressing the subsequent response and remediation steps creates an incomplete automation loop. This means that while alerts might be identified faster, the actual resolution of security incidents remains manual and slow, negating much of the potential benefit of automation and leaving the organization vulnerable to prolonged attacks. This incomplete strategy fails to achieve the full potential of security automation for incident lifecycle management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security automation with a strategic mindset, prioritizing tasks based on their impact, frequency, and complexity. A phased implementation allows for continuous learning and adaptation, ensuring that automation efforts are aligned with organizational goals and risk appetite. Evaluating existing SOAR platforms and frameworks before embarking on extensive custom development is crucial for efficiency and maintainability. Finally, a holistic view of the incident response lifecycle is necessary to ensure that automation addresses detection, analysis, and remediation effectively. Question 2. The review process indicates that a sophisticated cyber attack has compromised critical systems, leading to the deployment of ransomware, evidence of phishing campaigns targeting employees, and a subsequent distributed denial of service (DDoS) attack that disrupted services. Initial analysis suggests a possible insider facilitating the initial malware delivery, and there are concerns about potential data exfiltration. Given these findings, which of the following investigative and remediation strategies best aligns with professional security practices and regulatory compliance requirements for a comprehensive response? Option A. Initiate a full forensic investigation to identify the initial attack vector, scope of compromise, and evidence of data exfiltration, while simultaneously implementing network segmentation and access control reviews to contain the threat and prevent further lateral movement. Currently, conduct a thorough review of employee security awareness training and update vulnerability management policies based on identified weaknesses. Option B. Focus solely on eradicating the ransomware by wiping and reimaging affected systems, and then implement a new firewall rule to block the specific IP addresses used in the DDoS attack, assuming the phishing and insider threat elements are secondary. Option C. Immediately restore systems from backups, block all external IP addresses associated with the DDoS attack, and issue a public statement acknowledging a minor disruption, while internal teams investigate the malware. Option D. Engage a third-party public relations firm to manage all external communications and focus internal efforts on rebuilding the affected infrastructure without a detailed forensic analysis, as speed is paramount to restoring business operations. The correct answer is C. Immediately restore systems from backups, block all external IP addresses associated with the DDoS attack, and issue a public statement acknowledging a minor disruption, while internal teams investigate the malware. Explanation: this scenario presents a professionally challenging situation due to the multifaceted nature of the security incident and the need to balance immediate containment with long-term remediation and compliance. The organization has experienced a significant breach involving multiple attack vectors, including malware, social engineering, and potentially an insider threat, leading to a suspected data exfiltration and a DDoS attack. The challenge lies in accurately identifying the root cause, the full scope of the compromise, and the specific vulnerabilities exploited, all while adhering to the strict regulatory framework relevant to the CCNP security exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a systematic, evidence-based investigation that prioritizes incident response phases: identification, containment, eradication, and recovery, followed by lessons learned. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring a thorough understanding of the incident's lifecycle, minimizing further damage, and preventing recurrence. Specifically, it emphasizes the importance of forensic analysis to gather irrefutable evidence, which is crucial for regulatory compliance and potential legal proceedings. The focus on vulnerability management post-incident is also paramount, as it directly addresses the weaknesses that allowed the attack to succeed, thereby strengthening the overall security posture. This methodical approach ensures that all actions are justifiable, documented, and contribute to a resilient security framework, which is a core tenet of professional security practice and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches would fail to meet these professional and regulatory standards. For instance, an approach that focuses solely on immediate mitigation without thorough investigation risks overlooking critical aspects of the breach, such as the extent of data compromise or the involvement of insider threats. This could lead to incomplete remediation and continued exposure. A failure to conduct proper forensic analysis would violate principles of evidence preservation and chain of custody, which are often mandated by regulations for breach notification and accountability. Furthermore, neglecting to update vulnerability management processes based on the incident's findings would represent a significant ethical and professional lapse, as it demonstrates a disregard for learning from security events and proactively improving defenses. An approach that prioritizes public relations over accurate incident reporting could also lead to regulatory noncompliance and a loss of trust. A professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a structured incident response plan. This plan should guide the team through the stages of an incident, emphasizing clear communication, defined roles and responsibilities, and the meticulous documentation of all actions taken. Professionals must continuously assess the evolving threat landscape and adapt their strategies accordingly, always grounding their decisions in evidence and established security best practices. Adherence to the specific regulatory framework is non-negotiable, requiring an understanding of reporting obligations, data protection requirements, and potential legal ramifications. Question 3. The analysis reveals that a company's firewall is experiencing significant performance degradation and is becoming increasingly difficult to manage due to an overly complex and permissive rule set. The security team is tasked with optimizing the firewall's operation while maintaining or improving its security posture. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Aggressively simplify the firewall rule set by removing any rule that is not absolutely critical for immediate business operations, prioritizing performance above all other considerations. Option B. Focus exclusively on reconfiguring network address translation, NAT, rules to see if address translation efficiency can improve overall firewall throughput without altering the existing access control lists. Option C. Temporarily disable the firewall and revert to a default. Allow all configuration to immediately alleviate performance issues, with plans to reevaluate security later. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive audit of the existing firewall rule set to identify and remove redundant, overly broad, or unnecessary rules. Implement granular application layer policies and leverage next-generation firewall (NGFW) capabilities for advanced threat detection, while ensuring NAT configurations are optimized for efficiency and security. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive audit of the existing firewall rule set to identify and remove redundant, overly broad, or unnecessary rules. Implement granular application layer policies and leverage next-generation firewall (NGFW) capabilities for advanced threat detection, while ensuring NAT configurations are optimized for efficiency and security. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for granular access control with the operational overhead of managing complex firewall rule sets. The organization is experiencing performance degradation and increased administrative burden due to an overly permissive and poorly organized firewall policy. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of firewall technologies, security best practices, and the potential impact of misconfigurations on both security posture and network performance. The pressure to resolve these issues quickly without introducing new vulnerabilities or disrupting critical business operations adds to the complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review and refinement of the firewall rule set, prioritizing security and efficiency. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to robust network security. By identifying and removing redundant, overly broad, or unnecessary rules, the firewall can process traffic more efficiently, improving performance. Implementing specific application layer rules and leveraging NGFW capabilities for advanced threat detection and prevention enhances the security posture beyond simple port and protocol filtering. This approach is professionally sound, as it directly addresses the identified problems through established security engineering practices, ensuring compliance with general security best practices that underpin regulatory requirements for data protection and network integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling the firewall entirely or reverting to a default. Allow all configuration represents a severe security failure. This would expose the network to a wide range of threats, violating fundamental security principles and potentially contravening regulations that mandate reasonable security measures to protect sensitive data. Such an action would be ethically irresponsible and professionally unacceptable, demonstrating a lack of competence in network security. Implementing a purely performance-driven approach without considering security implications, such as aggressively simplifying rules to the point where they no longer provide adequate protection, is also a critical failure. This could lead to unauthorized access and data breaches, again violating security best practices and regulatory expectations for data protection. It prioritizes one operational aspect, performance, over the core security mandate of the firewall, focusing solely on NAT configuration without addressing the underlying rule set issues would be ineffective. While NAT is a crucial firewall function, it does not inherently solve problems related to overly permissive access rules or inefficient rule processing. It's a tool for address management, not a primary mechanism for access control policy optimization. This approach fails to address the root cause of the performance and management issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the current state. Thoroughly document the existing firewall configuration, including rule sets, NAT policies, and any observed performance metrics or operational challenges. 2. Defining objectives. Clearly articulate the desired outcomes, such as improved performance, reduced administrative overhead, and enhanced security posture. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the security risks associated with the current configuration and potential changes. 4. Solution design. Develop a phased approach to refine the rule set, implement application-aware policies, and optimize NAT configurations. This should include testing and validation steps. 5. Implementation and monitoring. Deploy changes incrementally, monitor performance and security logs closely, and be prepared to roll back if necessary. 6. Documentation and training. Ensure the new configuration is well documented and that relevant personnel are trained on its management. This systematic process ensures that security is maintained or improved while addressing operational concerns, adhering to professional standards, and implicit regulatory expectations for due diligence in network security. Question 4. System analysis indicates that a financial services firm is experiencing a high volume of alerts from its newly deployed intrusion prevention system, IPS. Many of these alerts are related to legitimate internal network traffic, causing significant operational overhead for the security team and occasional disruptions when automated blocking actions are triggered. The firm is under pressure to reduce these disruptions while ensuring robust protection against sophisticated cyber threats, as mandated by financial sector regulations. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for effective threat prevention with operational stability and regulatory compliance? Option A. Configure the IPS in passive mode to only log events without enabling any blocking capabilities, thereby eliminating operational disruptions caused by false positives. Option B. Implement a multi-layered detection strategy that combines signature-based detection for known threats with anomaly-based detection for unusual network activities, coupled with a rigorous, iterative tuning process informed by alert analysis and network traffic baselining to minimize false positives and false negatives. Option C. Aggressively tune the IPS by disabling all alerts with a confidence score below high and reducing the sensitivity of anomaly detection rules to a minimal level, prioritizing the elimination of all false positives. Option D. Disable anomaly-based detection entirely and rely solely on signature-based detection, as this method is known to produce fewer false positives and is generally easier to manage for operational stability. The correct answer is B. Implement a multi-layered detection strategy that combines signature-based detection for known threats with anomaly-based detection for unusual network activities, coupled with a rigorous, iterative tuning process informed by alert analysis and network traffic baselining to minimize false positives and false negatives. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security operations, balancing the need for robust intrusion detection and prevention with the operational reality of minimizing disruption. The organization is facing a critical decision regarding the deployment and tuning of an IDS/IPS solution. The professional challenge lies in selecting an approach that effectively mitigates threats without introducing unacceptable levels of false positives, which can lead to operational downtime and user frustration, or false negatives, which leave the organization vulnerable. Furthermore, the chosen strategy must align with the organization's security posture and any relevant regulatory compliance requirements, which often mandate specific levels of security monitoring and incident response. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation and continuous tuning process, prioritizing signature-based detection for known threats and supplementing it with anomaly-based detection for novel or zero-day attacks. This strategy represents best professional practice because it leverages the strengths of different detection methods. Signature-based detection is highly effective against well-documented threats, offering a low false positive rate and clear actionable intelligence. Anomaly-based detection, while potentially generating more false positives, is crucial for identifying deviations from normal network behavior, which could indicate sophisticated or unknown attacks. The continuous tuning process, informed by analysis of both alerts and network traffic, is essential for refining the system's accuracy, reducing false positives, and ensuring that critical threats are not missed. This iterative refinement directly supports the organization's security objectives and contributes to maintaining a strong security posture, which is often a requirement for regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing only signature-based detection without anomaly-based detection is a regulatory and ethical failure because it creates a blind spot for unknown threats. While effective against known malware and attack patterns, it leaves the organization vulnerable to zero-day exploits and novel attack vectors, failing to meet the spirit of comprehensive security monitoring often implied by regulatory frameworks. Deploying an IDS/IPS in passive mode solely for logging without configuring it for active blocking or alerting on critical events is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach negates the prevention aspect of an IPS and reduces the system to a mere forensic tool. It fails to proactively protect the network, which is a core responsibility of security professionals and a likely expectation of regulatory bodies overseeing data protection and system integrity. Aggressively tuning the IDS/IPS to eliminate all false positives by disabling a broad range of alerts, including those with a moderate confidence score, is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. This approach prioritizes operational convenience over security, leading to a high risk of false negatives. By ignoring potential threats, the organization risks noncompliance with data breach notification laws and other regulations that mandate timely detection and response to security incidents. It also represents a dereliction of professional duty to protect organizational assets and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, understanding that no IDS/IPS solution is perfect. The decision-making process should involve 1. Threat modeling. Identify the most likely and impactful threats to the organization. 2. Technology selection. Choose IDS/IPS solutions that align with the threat model and organizational requirements. 3. Deployment strategy. Determine the optimal deployment mode: inline for prevention, passive for monitoring based on risk tolerance and operational impact. 4. Baseline establishment. Understand normal network behavior to effectively identify anomalies. 5. Phased implementation and tuning. Start with a conservative configuration and iteratively tune based on observed traffic and alert data, prioritizing critical alerts. 6. Continuous monitoring and improvement. Regularly review logs, update signatures, and adapt tuning rules to evolving threat landscapes and network changes. 7. Documentation. Maintain clear records of configuration changes, tuning decisions, and incident responses for audit and compliance purposes. Question 5. Cost-benefit analysis shows that upgrading the wireless network infrastructure to the latest security standards will incur significant upfront costs. The current infrastructure uses WPA2 and rogue access point detection is managed through manual periodic sweeps. Given the increasing volume of sensitive customer data transmitted wirelessly, what is the most prudent course of action to ensure robust security and compliance? Option A. Maintain the current WPA2 configuration and invest in additional endpoint security solutions to compensate for perceived wireless vulnerabilities. Option B. Downgrade to WPA2 Enterprise with EAPTLS for authentication, but defer the WIPS deployment to a later budget cycle to manage immediate costs. Option C. Continue with WPA2 as it is still considered reasonably secure for most current threats, and increase the frequency of manual rogue access point sweeps. Option D. Implement WPA3 with EAP-based authentication and deploy an automated wireless intrusion prevention system, WIPS, for continuous rogue access point detection and mitigation. The correct answer is D. Implement WPA3 with EAP-based authentication and deploy an automated wireless intrusion prevention system, WIPS, for continuous rogue access point detection and mitigation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial implications of security upgrades against the long-term risks and potential regulatory noncompliance. The organization is facing a decision that directly impacts its security posture and its ability to meet industry standards and potentially legal obligations related to data protection. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both cost-effective and robust enough to protect sensitive information. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive security strategy that addresses multiple layers of wireless security. Implementing WPA3 with EAP-based authentication and robust rogue access point detection mechanisms aligns with current industry best practices and the evolving threat landscape. This proactive stance minimizes the attack surface, enhances data confidentiality and integrity, and demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy regulations that often mandate strong security controls. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes the protection of user data and organizational assets. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the cheapest immediate solution, such as continuing with WEP or WPA, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. WEP is demonstrably insecure, and its continued use would violate the principle of due diligence in data protection, potentially leading to breaches and subsequent regulatory penalties under frameworks that require reasonable security measures. Similarly, relying only on WPA without considering WPA2 or WPA3 ignores known vulnerabilities and fails to meet the standard of care expected in modern network security. Another incorrect approach might be to ignore rogue access point detection, which is a critical component of wireless security. Failing to detect and mitigate rogue APs leaves the network vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks and unauthorized access, directly contravening the ethical obligation to protect the network and its users from harm. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment, considering the sensitivity of the data being transmitted wirelessly and the potential impact of a breach. This should be followed by an evaluation of available technologies against current security standards and regulatory requirements. The cost-benefit analysis should not solely focus on immediate expenditure, but also on the total cost of ownership, including the potential costs of a security incident. Finally, ongoing monitoring and periodic reevaluation of security measures are crucial to adapt to emerging threats and evolving best practices. Question 6. During the evaluation of a new network security appliance intended for deployment in a critical production environment, a project manager is pushing for immediate integration to meet a tight deadline. The security team has identified several potential integration challenges that require thorough testing to ensure the appliance does not negatively impact existing security controls or introduce new vulnerabilities. The project manager suggests bypassing the standard testing procedures in an isolated staging environment and proceeding directly with deployment to the live network, arguing that post-deployment monitoring will catch any issues. Which of the following approaches best aligns with established security principles and best practices for this scenario? Option A. Conduct a phased integration, beginning with testing in an isolated staging environment that mirrors the production network, followed by a controlled rollout to a subset of the production environment, and then full deployment after successful validation. Option B. Deploy the appliance directly into the production environment with full administrative privileges for all users to ensure immediate functionality and allow for rapid troubleshooting if issues arise. Option C. Implement the appliance in the production environment with minimal security configurations, relying on the existing security infrastructure to provide the necessary protection and address specific security gaps later. Option D. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the appliance to the production network and defer all security configuration and policy enforcement until after the system is fully operational. The correct answer is A. Conduct a phased integration, beginning with testing in an isolated staging environment that mirrors the production network, followed by a controlled rollout to a subset of the production environment, and then full deployment after successful validation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a newly implemented system requires integration with existing infrastructure. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for functionality and deployment speed with the imperative to adhere to established security principles and organizational policies. Rushing the integration without proper validation risks introducing vulnerabilities, compromising data confidentiality, integrity, or availability, and potentially violating compliance requirements. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly can create a conflict with the meticulous, risk-averse approach demanded by robust security practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased integration and validation process, aligning with the principles of defense in depth and least privilege. By first testing in a controlled, isolated environment, the security team can verify that the new system does not introduce unintended security gaps or conflicts with existing controls. This methodical approach ensures that confidentiality, integrity, and availability are maintained throughout the integration lifecycle. Furthermore, it allows for the application of the principle of least privilege by granting only necessary access and permissions during testing and initial deployment, minimizing the attack surface. This aligns with the broader goals of security governance and risk management by proactively identifying and mitigating potential risks before they impact the production environment. Adherence to established security policies and procedures is also paramount, ensuring that all integration steps are documented and approved, contributing to compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Deploying the system directly into the production environment without prior validation in an isolated setting represents a significant failure in defense in depth. This bypasses crucial testing phases, increasing the risk of immediate security breaches that could compromise confidentiality, integrity, or availability. It also violates the principle of least privilege by potentially granting excessive access during the initial, unverified deployment. This approach demonstrates a disregard for risk management and security governance, as potential threats are not adequately assessed or mitigated. Implementing the system with full administrative privileges for all users, even those not requiring such access, directly contravenes the principle of least privilege. This broad access significantly expands the attack surface, making it easier for malicious actors to exploit vulnerabilities and compromise system integrity or confidentiality. It also undermines the effectiveness of authorization controls and increases the risk of accidental data modification or deletion, impacting data integrity. This approach is a clear violation of established security policies and procedures designed to enforce granular access control, focusing solely on the functionality of the new system, while deferring security configuration and policy enforcement to a later date, is a critical failure in security governance and compliance. This creates a window of vulnerability where the system is exposed and unprotected, directly impacting confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It also demonstrates a lack of commitment to incident response preparedness, as a compromised system would be more difficult to contain and remediate. This approach prioritizes short-term operational goals over long-term security posture and regulatory adherence. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, phased approach to system integration. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the security requirements and potential risks associated with the new system. 2. Planning and executing integration in a controlled, isolated environment, mirroring production as closely as possible. 3. Applying the principle of least privilege throughout the testing and deployment phases. 4. Validating that the new system adheres to all relevant security policies, procedures, and compliance mandates. 5. Establishing robust monitoring and incident response capabilities before and after full deployment. This systematic process ensures that security is an integral part of the deployment, not an afterthought, and aligns with best practices in security governance and risk management. Question 7. Upon reviewing the organization's current security posture and recent threat intelligence reports indicating an increase in sophisticated internal and external attacks, a comprehensive risk assessment has highlighted significant vulnerabilities related to lateral movement of threats within the network. The organization needs to implement a more robust network segmentation strategy to mitigate these risks effectively, considering the need for both broad network separation and granular control over intersegment communication. Which of the following approaches best addresses the identified risks while aligning with best practices for defense in depth? Option A. Deploy microsegmentation across all network segments without prior analysis of application dependencies, aiming for maximum granular control. Option B. Rely solely on the existing VLAN configuration to segregate different departments and user groups, assuming this provides sufficient isolation. Option C. Implement a layered segmentation strategy combining VLAN for broad network separation, microsegmentation for granular workload isolation, and a robust network access control (NAC) solution for policy enforcement. Option D. Implement a network access control (NAC) solution to authenticate all devices and users connecting to the network, without altering the existing flat network architecture? The correct answer is C. Implement a layered segmentation strategy combining VLAN for broad network separation, micro-segmentation for granular workload isolation, and a robust network access control (NAC) solution for policy enforcement. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security, balancing the need for robust network segmentation to mitigate risk with the operational complexities and potential impact on business continuity. The organization is facing an increased threat landscape, necessitating a proactive approach to security posture enhancement. The challenge lies in selecting the most effective segmentation strategy that aligns with their risk appetite, existing infrastructure, and compliance requirements without introducing undue operational burden or hindering legitimate business functions. A poorly chosen strategy could lead to increased attack surface, compliance violations, or significant disruption. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a layered segmentation strategy that combines VLAN for broad network separation, micro-segmentation for granular workload isolation, and a robust network access control (NAC) solution for policy enforcement represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the risk assessment findings by creating distinct security zones, limiting lateral movement of threats, and ensuring only authorized devices and users can access specific network segments. From a regulatory perspective, this aligns with principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by various security frameworks and compliance mandates e.g. NIST Cybersecurity Framework, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, HIPAA, depending on the specific industry and jurisdiction. The use of firewalls at segment boundaries enforces policy, and SDN can provide dynamic policy management and orchestration, further enhancing agility and security. This comprehensive approach provides the most effective risk reduction. Incorrect approach is analysis, relying solely on VLAN for segmentation, while a foundational step is insufficient against modern threats. VLAN primarily provide logical separation at layer 2 and can be bypassed with relatively simple techniques if not properly secured with access control lists, ACL, or firewall rules. This approach fails to address the risk of internal threats or compromised internal systems attempting to move laterally. Ethically, it represents a failure to implement adequate controls commensurate with the identified risks. Implementing micro-segmentation without a clear understanding of traffic flows and dependencies can lead to significant operational disruption. While granular, it requires meticulous planning and ongoing management. If not carefully deployed, it can inadvertently block legitimate business traffic, impacting productivity and potentially leading to compliance issues if critical services become unavailable. This approach, if poorly executed, demonstrates a lack of due diligence in assessing operational impact. Deploying NAC without a well-defined segmentation strategy can lead to a false sense of security. NAC is effective at controlling access to the network, but without segmentation, a compromised device that gains access could still potentially reach a wide range of resources. This approach fails to limit the blast radius of a successful intrusion, representing a gap in the overall risk mitigation strategy. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach network segmentation by first conducting a thorough risk assessment that identifies critical assets, potential threats, and vulnerabilities. This assessment should inform the design of the segmentation strategy, prioritizing the protection of high-value targets. The next step involves evaluating existing infrastructure and operational requirements to determine the feasibility and impact of different segmentation technologies. A phased implementation approach, starting with broader segmentation, VLAN, and progressively moving to more granular controls, micro-segmentation, NAC, is often advisable. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment of the segmentation strategy are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and business needs. Decision-making should be guided by the principle of achieving the highest level of security within practical operational and budgetary constraints, always with a focus on demonstrable risk reduction. Question 8. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly deploying hybrid cloud environments and require secure connectivity between on-premises data centers and cloud-based resources. A network security engineer is tasked with designing a VPN solution to connect these disparate locations and provide secure remote access for employees. Considering the need for both site-to-site and remote access VPNs. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ISEC VPN best practices for securing this hybrid environment? Option A. Utilize ISEC tunnel mode for all VPN traffic, including remote access, to ensure maximum security by encapsulating all original IP packets and avoid SSL/TLS VPNs due to perceived complexity. Option B. Deploy ISEC transport mode for all site-to-site VPNs to minimize overhead, and use ISEC tunnel mode for remote access VPNs to provide comprehensive security. Option C. Configure all VPN traffic, both site-to-site and remote access, to use only ISEC AH authentication header to ensure data integrity without the performance impact of encryption. Option D. Implement ISEC tunnel mode for all site-to-site VPNs to encapsulate and protect the entire original IP packet, and utilize SSL/TLS VPNs for remote access, leveraging their NAT traversal capabilities and ease of deployment. The correct answer is D. Implement ISEC tunnel mode for all site-to-site VPNs to encapsulate and protect the entire original IP packet, and utilize SSL/TLS VPNs for remote access, leveraging their NAT traversal capabilities and ease of deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network security, balancing robust security with operational efficiency and compliance. The core difficulty lies in selecting the most appropriate ISEC VPN mode for different traffic types, while adhering to security best practices and potential regulatory requirements that might mandate specific encryption standards or data protection levels. The correct approach must prioritize data confidentiality and integrity for sensitive traffic, while potentially allowing for less overhead on less critical data. The correct approach involves a nuanced understanding of ISEC tunnel mode and transport mode, and their respective strengths and weaknesses in different contexts. Tunnel mode encapsulates the entire original IP packet within a new IP packet, adding both ISEC headers and a new IP header. This is ideal for site-to-site VPNs, where the original source and destination IP addresses need to be hidden from the public internet, and it provides full encryption of the original packet. Transport mode, on the other hand, only encrypts the payload of the original IP packet, leaving the original IP header intact. This is typically used for host-to-host communication, where the endpoints are aware of the ISEC protection. For remote access VPNs, SSL/TLS VPNs are often preferred due to their ability to traverse NAT more easily, and their use of standard web ports, which are less likely to be blocked by firewalls. An incorrect approach would be to universally apply tunnel mode for all VPN traffic, regardless of its sensitivity or origin. This would introduce unnecessary overhead for internal traffic that might not require the full encapsulation and header protection, impacting performance. Another incorrect approach would be to exclusively use transport mode for site-to-site VPNs, which would expose the original internal IP addresses to the intermediate network, potentially compromising internal network topology information and failing to provide the full security benefits of tunnel mode for intersite communication. Relying solely on AH authentication header without ESB encapsulating security payload would fail to provide confidentiality, which is a critical security requirement for most VPN deployments, especially when transmitting sensitive data. Professionals must adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough assessment of the data being transmitted, its sensitivity, the communication endpoints, and the network path. This involves understanding the specific security requirements for each type of traffic and the capabilities of the chosen VPN technologies. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed here for a specific jurisdiction, often mandate data confidentiality and integrity, guiding the selection of encryption protocols and modes. The decision should be driven by a risk-based approach, prioritizing the protection of the most sensitive data while optimizing performance for less critical traffic. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that a financial institution is implementing a new secure communication channel for interbranch transactions. The security team is evaluating cryptographic approaches and public key infrastructure, PKI, components. Which of the following approaches best aligns with current security best practices and regulatory expectations for protecting sensitive financial data? Option A. Employ DES for symmetric encryption due to its widespread legacy support. Use MD5 for all data integrity checks, and implement PKI without a formal certificate revocation list, CRL, or Online Certificate Status Protocol, OXP mechanism. Option B. Use AES 128 for symmetric encryption, RSA with a 1024-bit key for asymmetric operations, and implement PKI with a CRL but no OXP support. Option C. Utilize AES 256 for symmetric encryption, RSA with a minimum 2048-bit key for asymmetric operations and digital signatures, and implement a comprehensive PKI with defined certificate issuance, validation, and revocation procedures. Option D. Leverage 3DES for symmetric encryption, rely on ECC with short key lengths for asymmetric operations, and establish a PKI where certificates are issued indefinitely, without any renewal or revocation process. The correct answer is C. Utilize AES 256 for symmetric encryption, RSA with a minimum 2048-bit key for asymmetric operations and digital signatures, and implement a comprehensive PKI with defined certificate issuance, validation, and revocation procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust encryption with the practicalities of key management and compliance. The professional challenge lies in selecting cryptographic algorithms and implementing PKI correctly to meet security objectives, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing network security operations within the context of the CCNP security exam's assumed jurisdiction, which, for this exam, implies a focus on general best practices and common international standards, without specifying a single country's unique laws unless explicitly stated. The requirement for deep analysis means understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each cryptographic method and PKI component in relation to security principles and potential vulnerabilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes algorithms and protocols that are currently considered secure and widely supported, while also acknowledging the importance of a well-defined PKI lifecycle. Using AES with a sufficiently long key length, e.g., 256-bit, for symmetric encryption provides strong confidentiality and integrity and is a recognized standard. Employing RSA or ECC for asymmetric operations, particularly for key exchange and digital signatures, offers robust security for authentication and non-repudiation. A well-structured PKI, including proper certificate issuance, management, and revocation processes, is fundamental to establishing trust in digital communications and is a cornerstone of secure network operations. This approach aligns with the principle of using strong, modern cryptography and a sound PKI framework to mitigate risks. Each incorrect approach represents specific regulatory or ethical failures. Using DES or 3DES, while historically significant, is now considered cryptographically weak and vulnerable to brute force attacks, failing to meet the standard of care expected for protecting sensitive data, and thus violating the implicit regulatory requirement for using secure, up-to-date cryptographic methods. Relying solely on MD5 for integrity checks is also a failure, as MD5 is known to be susceptible to collision attacks, compromising data integrity and potentially enabling malicious manipulation. Implementing PKI without a defined certificate revocation process is a critical security and ethical lapse. It means that compromised or invalid certificates remain trusted, creating significant vulnerabilities and failing to uphold the integrity of the trust model, which is a fundamental regulatory and ethical obligation. Similarly, using weak or short key lengths for symmetric encryption or relying on outdated asymmetric algorithms would also be considered a failure to implement adequate security controls. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, understanding the data sensitivity, the threat landscape, and the applicable regulatory requirements. This includes evaluating the current state of cryptographic algorithms and PKI best practices, prioritizing solutions that offer strong security guarantees and are widely accepted. It also necessitates a proactive approach to key management and certificate lifecycle management, ensuring that security controls are maintained throughout their operational life. Professionals must stay informed about emerging threats and vulnerabilities and be prepared to update their security implementations accordingly. Question 10. The performance metrics show an increasing number of suspicious network traffic patterns, indicating a potential rise in sophisticated threats. To effectively identify and mitigate these threats, a comprehensive network security monitoring solution is required. However, the organization operates under strict data privacy guidelines that limit the collection and retention of user data, which approach best balances the need for robust threat detection with adherence to privacy regulations. Option A. Deploy a solution that captures and stores all raw network traffic, including full packet captures and detailed user session data, for an indefinite period to ensure no threat is missed. Option B. Implement a solution that captures and analyzes all network traffic metadata, anonymizing personally identifiable information, PI, where possible, and establishing strict data retention policies for logs and captured packets. Option C. Utilize a solution that focuses solely on outbound traffic analysis, assuming internal threats are less likely and outbound traffic is the primary indicator of compromise. Option D. Limit network monitoring to only basic firewall logs and intrusion detection system alerts, relying on endpoint security for granular threat analysis. Correct answer is B. Implement a solution that captures and analyzes all network traffic metadata, anonymizing personally identifiable information, PI, where possible, and establishing strict data retention policies for logs and captured packets. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for network visibility and threat detection with the long-term implications of data privacy and compliance. The core conflict lies in how to effectively monitor network traffic for security threats without inadvertently violating data privacy regulations or organizational policies. The decision-making process must be grounded in a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, which for the CCNP security exam implicitly refers to general best practices and common regulatory principles that would be tested in a global context, without specifying a single jurisdiction unless explicitly stated. In the absence of a specific jurisdiction, the focus remains on universally accepted security and privacy principles. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a risk-based methodology that aligns security objectives with privacy requirements. By implementing granular access controls, anonymization techniques where appropriate, and clear data retention policies, it demonstrates a commitment to both security and responsible data handling. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of regulatory noncompliance and builds trust with stakeholders. It adheres to the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are fundamental to modern cybersecurity frameworks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on unrestricted data collection for security purposes fails to acknowledge the legal and ethical obligations surrounding data privacy. This could lead to violations of data protection laws e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or similar principles if a specific jurisdiction were implied, resulting in significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that restricts monitoring to the point where threat detection is compromised creates a significant security vulnerability, leaving the organization exposed to attacks. This failure to adequately protect organizational assets and data is a direct breach of professional responsibility and could also have legal ramifications if it leads to a data breach. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core problem and its potential impacts. This involves understanding the technical requirements for security, the legal and ethical constraints related to data privacy, and the organizational policies in place. The next step is to brainstorm potential solutions, evaluating each against these constraints. A risk assessment should then be conducted for each viable solution, considering the likelihood and impact of both security and privacy breaches. Finally, the chosen solution should be implemented with ongoing monitoring and periodic review to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance. Question 11. Governance review demonstrates that the current security information and event management (SIEM) system is underutilized and lacks the ability to effectively detect advanced threats. The security team is tasked with improving its capabilities, considering the potential for regulatory scrutiny regarding data privacy and the need for efficient threat detection. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for enhancing SIEM effectiveness? Option A. Implement comprehensive data retention policies that align with relevant regulatory frameworks and define specific security event correlation rules informed by up-to-date threat intelligence feeds. Option B. Integrate the SIEM with external threat intelligence sources, without establishing clear data retention policies or defining specific security event correlation rules, relying on the intelligence to automatically flag all potential threats. Option C. Focus on aggregating all collected logs into a central repository without developing sophisticated correlation rules, assuming that a large volume of data will inherently reveal security issues. Option D. Prioritize the collection of all available log data from every network device and application, regardless of relevance or retention policies, to ensure no potential evidence is missed. The correct answer is A. Implement comprehensive data retention policies that align with relevant regulatory frameworks and define specific security event correlation rules informed by up-to-date threat intelligence feeds. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for enhanced security visibility with the long-term implications of data privacy and regulatory compliance. Organizations must collect and analyze vast amounts of log data to detect threats, but doing so without a clear understanding of data retention policies, privacy regulations, such as those potentially applicable under U.S. federal or state laws relevant to network security operations, and the scope of what constitutes a security event, can lead to significant legal and operational risks. The complexity arises from the sheer volume of data, the diverse sources, and the need to derive actionable intelligence without compromising sensitive information or violating compliance mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, focusing on establishing clear data retention policies aligned with regulatory requirements and defining specific security event correlation rules based on threat intelligence, represents best professional practice. This is because it directly addresses the core principles of effective SIEM implementation: collecting relevant data, processing it intelligently, and using it for actionable security insights, all while adhering to legal and ethical obligations. By aligning data retention with regulations, the organization avoids unnecessary storage costs and potential privacy violations. Defining correlation rules based on threat intelligence ensures that the SIEM is tuned to detect relevant threats, maximizing its effectiveness and minimizing false positives, which is crucial for efficient incident response and resource allocation. This proactive and compliant approach minimizes legal exposure and maximizes the return on investment in security technologies. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that prioritizes the collection of all available log data without regard for retention policies or privacy implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. It risks violating data privacy laws by collecting and storing more information than necessary or legally permissible, potentially leading to fines and reputational damage. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for individual privacy. An approach that focuses solely on aggregating logs without implementing robust security event correlation rules is also professionally deficient. While aggregation is a necessary step, it does not, by itself, provide actionable security intelligence. This approach fails to leverage the SIEM core capability to detect sophisticated threats by identifying patterns and anomalies across disparate log sources. The regulatory and ethical failure here lies in the ineffective use of security resources and the potential for missed critical security events, which could be considered a breach of due diligence in protecting organizational assets and data. An approach that neglects the integration of threat intelligence into the SIEM correlation engine is professionally unsound. Threat intelligence is vital for understanding current and emerging threats. Without it, the SIEM correlation rules are likely to be outdated and ineffective against sophisticated adversaries. This leads to a failure in providing adequate security monitoring, which can have significant regulatory implications if it results in a security incident that could have been prevented or detected with up-to-date threat information. Ethically, it represents a failure to employ best-in-class security practices to protect stakeholders. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased and risk-based approach to SIEM implementation. This involves first understanding the organization's regulatory landscape and data privacy obligations. Next, they should define clear objectives for the SIEM, focusing on the types of threats to detect and the critical assets to protect. This informs the selection of log sources, the the design of correlation rules, and the integration of threat intelligence. Data retention policies must be established upfront and regularly reviewed to ensure ongoing compliance. Dashboards and reporting should be tailored to provide relevant, actionable information to different stakeholders, from technical analysts to executive management, facilitating informed decision-making and demonstrating the value of the SIEM investment. Question 12. Implementation of a comprehensive authentication strategy that integrates multi-factor authentication (MFA) and single sign-on (SSO) across an enterprise network, considering user experience, security, and compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks, requires careful consideration of various approaches. Which of the following approaches best represents a professional and compliant implementation? Option A. Relying solely on a strict password policy with mandatory periodic password changes as the primary authentication control, without implementing MFA or SSO. Option B. Implementing SSO for all applications but deferring MFA implementation to a later phase, focusing only on critical systems initially. Option C. A rapid, big bang deployment of SSO and MFA across all systems simultaneously to quickly achieve compliance and user adoption. Option D. A phased rollout beginning with a pilot program, leveraging standards-based protocols for SSO, offering a range of strong MFA factors, enforcing strong password policies, and conducting regular log audits. The correct answer is D. A phased rollout beginning with a pilot program, leveraging standards-based protocols for SSO, offering a range of strong MFA factors, enforcing strong password policies, and conducting regular log audits. Explanation: scenario analysis. Implementing multi-factor authentication (MFA) and single sign-on (SSO) in a large enterprise environment presents significant challenges. These include ensuring seamless user experience while maintaining robust security, integrating with diverse legacy and modern applications, managing different authentication factors, and addressing potential performance impacts. The complexity escalates when considering the need to comply with evolving security standards and best practices, particularly within the context of U.S. regulatory frameworks that emphasize data protection and access control. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy that prioritizes user experience and security. This includes conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets and sensitive data, followed by a pilot program to test the integrated MFA/SSO solution with a representative user group. Leveraging standards-based protocols like SAML or OAuth for SSO integration ensures interoperability and security. For MFA, offering a variety of strong authentication factors, e.g., hardware tokens, authenticator apps, biometrics, allows users to choose based on convenience and security needs, while enforcing strong password policies and regular audits of authentication logs are crucial for ongoing security posture management. This aligns with U.S. regulatory requirements such as NIST SB 800-63B, which mandates strong authentication and multi-factor authentication for federal systems, emphasizing a risk-based approach to security controls. Incorrect approaches analysis. A hasty, big bang rollout without adequate testing or user training is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It increases the risk of security vulnerabilities due to misconfigurations and user errors, potentially leading to unauthorized access and data breaches, which directly contravenes data protection regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS if applicable to the organization's data. Implementing SSO without robust MFA for all access points is another failure. While SSO improves user convenience, it creates a single point of failure. If the SSO credentials are compromised, an attacker gains access to all integrated applications, a severe security risk that violates the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, often implicitly or explicitly required by U.S. security frameworks. Solely relying on password policies without implementing MFA or SSO is insufficient. Password policies alone, even strong ones, are vulnerable to phishing, brute force attacks, and credential stuffing. This approach fails to meet the modern security expectations and regulatory guidance that advocate for layered security controls, leaving sensitive data exposed. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based, phased approach to implementing authentication solutions. This involves understanding the organization's specific threat landscape, regulatory obligation, and user base, Prioritizing security while minimizing user friction is key. Continuous monitoring, regular security audits, and staying abreast of evolving threats and best practices are essential for maintaining an effective and compliant authentication infrastructure. The decision-making process should always start with a comprehensive assessment of requirements and risks, followed by the selection of solutions that align with established security frameworks and regulatory mandates. Question 13. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of advanced persistent threats, apt targeting the organization's sensitive financial data with a moderate impact if compromised. The proposed EPP solution includes robust EDR capabilities, host-based firewalls, and an application whitelisting feature. However, initial testing indicates that EDR and strict application whitelisting significantly impact the performance of critical accounting software, leading to user complaints and potential delays in financial reporting. The security team is under pressure to deploy the EPP quickly. What is the most appropriate course of action to address the identified APT risk while managing the performance impact and ensuring compliance? Option A. Focus on deploying only the antivirus component of the EPP solution, as it is the most critical for preventing known malware, and defer the implementation of EDR, hardening, and application whitelisting to a later, less critical phase. Option B. Deploy the EPP with strict application whitelisting enabled for all users, blocking any non-whitelisted applications immediately to prevent potential APT entry points, and address performance complaints after deployment. Option C. Implement endpoint hardening and configure EDR in monitoring mode to detect suspicious activities without immediate blocking. Simultaneously, begin a phased rollout of application whitelisting, starting with a learning mode to identify legitimate applications before enforcing strict policies, and escalate performance issues with the accounting software vendor for resolution. Option D. Immediately disable EDR and application whitelisting features to ensure the accounting software runs without performance issues, and rely solely on antivirus for threat detection. The correct answer is C. Implement endpoint hardening and configure EDR in monitoring mode to detect suspicious activities without immediate blocking. Simultaneously, begin a phased rollout of application whitelisting, starting with a learning mode to identify legitimate applications before enforcing strict policies, and escalate performance issues with the accounting software vendor for resolution. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in cybersecurity, particularly within the context of endpoint security. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for operational continuity and user productivity with the long-term security posture and regulatory compliance requirements. The pressure to quickly resolve a perceived security gap, especially when it impacts critical business functions, can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook fundamental security principles or introduce new vulnerabilities. The core of the challenge is navigating conflicting priorities, immediate business needs versus robust, compliant security implementation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, risk-based implementation that aligns with established security best practices and regulatory frameworks relevant to the CCNP security domain. This involves a thorough assessment of the EPP solution's capability, particularly its EDR and application whitelisting features, against the identified risks. Prioritizing endpoint hardening and configuring EDR for proactive threat detection and response demonstrates a commitment to a layered security strategy. Implementing application whitelisting in a controlled, phased manner, starting with a monitoring mode before enforcing it, minimizes disruption while ensuring that only authorized applications can run. This approach is best professional practice because it adheres to the principle of least privilege, reduces the attack surface, and aligns with common security frameworks that advocate for proactive threat hunting and controlled application execution. It also supports compliance by demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive data and systems. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, immediate block on all non-whitelisted applications without a proper assessment or phased rollout is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for disrupting critical business operations, which could lead to financial losses and reputational damage, potentially violating service-level agreements or industry-specific regulations that mandate business continuity. It also fails to adhere to the principle of proportionality in security measures, applying an overly restrictive control without sufficient justification or testing. Disabling EDR capabilities to improve performance, even temporarily, is a severe security and ethical lapse. EDR is crucial for detecting and responding to advanced threats that traditional antivirus might miss. Disabling it creates a blind spot, leaving the organization vulnerable to sophisticated attacks. This directly contradicts the responsibility to maintain a robust security posture and protect organizational assets, potentially violating data protection regulations if a breach occurs due to this oversight. It also demonstrates a lack of commitment to proactive threat intelligence and incident response. Focusing solely on antivirus and ignoring EDR, hardening, and application control is an incomplete security strategy. While antivirus is a foundational element, it is insufficient on its own against modern threats. This approach fails to address the evolving threat landscape and the need for more advanced endpoint protection. It represents a failure to implement a comprehensive security solution as expected of a security professional, potentially leaving the organization exposed and non-compliant with security best practices that mandate a multi-layered defense. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such dilemmas by first understanding the full scope of the risk and the proposed solution. This involves consulting the risk matrix, understanding the specific threats identified, and evaluating the capabilities of the EPP solution. The decision-making process should involve a risk-benefit analysis for each proposed action, considering the impact on security, operations, and compliance. Prioritization should be based on the severity of the risk and the effectiveness of the control. A phased implementation, thorough testing, and clear communication with stakeholders are essential. Professionals must always prioritize a defense-in-depth strategy and adhere to the principle of least privilege, ensuring that security measures are effective without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. When in doubt, consulting with senior security leadership or compliance officers is a prudent step. Question 14. System analysis indicates a critical customer-facing web application has been compromised, exhibiting unusual outbound network traffic and unauthorized file modifications. The business is demanding immediate restoration of service to minimize financial losses. Which of the following incident response action should be prioritized to ensure a secure and compliant resolution? Option A. Focus solely on analyzing the unusual outbound traffic to understand the attacker's exfiltration methods, deferring containment and eradication until the analysis is complete. Option B. Immediately isolate the affected web server and its associated network segment to prevent further spread. Then proceed with forensic analysis to identify the root cause and scope of the compromise before attempting any restoration. Option C. Initiate a full system restore from the most recent known good backup to bring the application back online as quickly as possible, addressing security concerns after service is restored. Option D. Begin immediate eradication of all suspicious files and processes on the affected server without isolating it, assuming the threat is contained to that single machine. The correct answer is B. Immediately isolate the affected web server and its associated network segment to prevent further spread, then proceed with forensic analysis to identify the root cause and scope of the compromise before attempting any restoration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common but challenging incident response situation where a critical system is compromised. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to restore service with the imperative to thoroughly investigate the incident, contain its spread, and prevent recurrence, all while adhering to established incident response frameworks and potentially regulatory compliance requirements. The pressure to quickly restore operations can lead to shortcuts that compromise security and compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes containment and eradication before full recovery. This aligns with best practices in incident response, emphasizing a structured, phased methodology. By containing the threat, the organization prevents further damage and data exfiltration. Eradicating the root cause ensures the threat is removed. Only after these steps are completed can recovery be initiated with confidence, minimizing the risk of reinfection or recurrence. This methodical approach is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the investigation, supporting potential legal or regulatory actions, and fulfilling due diligence obligations to protect sensitive data. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that immediately focuses solely on restoring service without adequate containment or eradication is professionally unacceptable. This failure to contain the incident could lead to the continued spread of malware, further data breaches, and increased system instability, violating the principle of minimizing harm. It also compromises the integrity of forensic evidence, hindering any subsequent investigation and potentially violating data protection regulations by failing to adequately secure compromised systems. An approach that delays reporting or investigation to focus exclusively on system restoration, even if temporary, is also flawed. This delay can lead to a loss of critical evidence needed for root cause analysis and remediation. Furthermore, depending on the nature of the data compromised and the applicable regulations, e.g., data breach notification laws, failure to promptly investigate and report could result in significant legal penalties and reputational damage. An approach that attempts to eradicate the threat without first understanding its scope through containment and identification is risky. This could lead to incomplete eradication, leaving residual threats within the network. It also bypasses the crucial identification phase, which is essential for understanding the attack vector and developing effective long-term defenses, potentially leading to a repeat incident and a failure to meet security best practices. Professional reasoning. Professionals should follow a structured incident response plan that aligns with established frameworks like NIST SB 800-61. The decision-making process should involve assessing the severity of the incident, prioritizing actions based on potential impact and risk, and documenting every step taken. This ensures a systematic and defensible response, minimizing damage, facilitating recovery, and meeting compliance obligations. Question 15. Market research demonstrates that a growing number of employees prefer to use their personal mobile devices for work, presenting both opportunities for flexibility and challenges for security. An organization is looking to implement a BYOD strategy that balances user convenience with robust data protection and compliance. Which of the following approaches best aligns with industry, best practices, and regulatory expectations for securing corporate data on mobile devices? Option A. Rely on employees to install and maintain their preferred antivirus software on their personal devices and grant broad access to corporate resources, assuming that most employees are security conscious. Option B. Focus solely on encrypting the entire personal device, assuming that this level of protection is sufficient for all corporate data accessed from the device. Option C. Provide employees with a list of approved personal devices that are allowed to connect to the corporate network, without implementing any specific management or security controls on those devices. Option D. Implement a comprehensive mobile device management (MDM) solution that enforces strong authentication, encrypts corporate data, utilizes mobile application management (MAM) for data segregation, and deploys mobile threat defense (MTD) to monitor for and mitigate security risks. A clear BYOD policy will outline user responsibilities and device security requirements. The correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive mobile device management (MDM) solution that enforces strong authentication, encrypts corporate data, utilizes mobile application management (MAM) for data segregation, and deploys mobile threat defense (MTD) to monitor for and mitigate security risks. A clear BYOD policy will outline user responsibilities and device security requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in modern IT security, balancing the flexibility and cost-effectiveness of BYOD with the imperative to protect sensitive corporate data. The professional challenge lies in implementing a robust mobile security strategy that satisfies both user needs and stringent regulatory compliance, without creating undue administrative burden or hindering productivity. Need for careful judgment arises from the inherent risks associated with personal devices accessing corporate resources, including data leakage, malware infection, and unauthorized access. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multi-layered strategy that prioritizes data protection and compliance through a combination of policy, technology, and user education. This aligns with best practices for mobile device management and security, as often mandated or recommended by regulatory frameworks relevant to data privacy and security, e.g., NIST guidelines, GDPR principles if applicable to the exam's jurisdiction. Specifically, implementing granular access controls, enforcing strong authentication, and utilizing mobile application management (MAM) to containerize corporate data and applications are crucial. Mobile threat defense (MTD) solutions are essential for detecting and mitigating threats on mobile devices. Clear BYOD policy that outlines acceptable use, security requirements, and data ownership is foundational. The enrollment and configuration process should be streamlined yet secure, ensuring devices meet minimum security baselines before gaining access. This comprehensive approach ensures that the organization maintains control over its data and meets its compliance obligations while enabling the benefits of BYOD. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that focuses solely on device-level encryption without addressing application-level security or data segregation, fails to adequately protect corporate data. This is a regulatory failure because it does not provide sufficient controls to prevent data leakage or unauthorized access, which are often explicit requirements in data protection regulations. Relying exclusively on user-provided antivirus software on personal devices is also a significant failure. Organizations cannot guarantee the efficacy or consistent application of security measures on devices they do not control, leading to potential compliance violations related to data integrity and confidentiality. Furthermore, a policy that grants unrestricted access to corporate resources from any personal device, regardless of its security posture, directly contravenes the principle of least privilege and creates a substantial security and compliance risk. This approach ignores the fundamental need for risk assessment and mitigation in a BYOD environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach BYOD security by first understanding the organization's specific data sensitivity and regulatory obligations. This involves conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities. The next step is to develop a comprehensive BYOD policy that clearly defines security requirements, acceptable use, and the consequences of noncompliance. This policy should be supported by appropriate technical controls, including MDM/MAM solutions, strong authentication, and MTD. User education is paramount to ensure employees understand their responsibilities and the importance of security measures. Regular review and updates of the policy and technical controls are necessary to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 16. Investigation of a security incident reveals that several users were able to access sensitive financial reports without explicit authorization. A review of the Active Directory environment indicates that, while individual user permissions appear to be correctly configured, the issue seems to stem from group memberships and potentially misapplied group policies. The security team needs to implement a remediation strategy to prevent recurrence and ensure compliance with internal security policies and relevant data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation from a security and compliance perspective? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all Active Directory groups and their associated permissions, focusing on nested group memberships and the inheritance of group policies applied to the financial report directory before making any changes. Option B. Implement a new, more restrictive group policy that denies access to the financial report directory for all users, and then allow individual exceptions to be requested and granted. Option C. Immediately remove all users from any groups that have access to the financial report directory, and then reevaluate group memberships on a case-by-case basis after the incident is contained. Option D. Instruct the IT help desk to reset passwords for all users who had access to the financial report directory, and inform them that their access has been revoked pending further investigation. The correct answer is C. Immediately remove all users from any groups that have access to the financial report directory, and then reevaluate group memberships on a case-by-case basis after the incident is contained. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security, balancing the need for granular access control with operational efficiency and compliance. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that user permissions are correctly configured and maintained within Active Directory, AD, to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive resources, while also avoiding overly restrictive policies that hinder legitimate business operations. The specific regulatory framework for the CCNP security exam, which often implicitly aligns with common U.S. cybersecurity best practices and frameworks like NIST, emphasizes principles of least privilege, accountability, and regular auditing. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified security gaps through a systematic and compliant process. It prioritizes a thorough understanding of existing configurations and potential vulnerabilities before implementing changes. This aligns with the principle of due diligence required by many cybersecurity regulations, ensuring that security measures are informed and proportionate. By involving relevant stakeholders and documenting the process, it also promotes accountability and facilitates future audits, which are critical for demonstrating compliance. An incorrect approach that bypasses proper change control and documentation processes would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to unintended security breaches, data exfiltration, or service disruption, all of which could result in severe penalties under data protection laws and industry-specific regulations. It demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for established security protocols, potentially exposing the organization to legal liabilities and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical implementation without considering the business impact or user experience would also be professionally unsound. While technically proficient, it fails to recognize that security controls must be integrated into the operational workflow. This can lead to user frustration, workarounds that bypass security, and ultimately, a less secure environment. It neglects the ethical consideration of ensuring that security measures do not unduly impede the ability of employees to perform their duties. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the business context and the sensitivity of the resources being protected. 2. Identify the specific security objectives and regulatory requirements applicable to the environment. 3. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the current state, including AD configurations, group memberships, and GPO settings. 4. Develop a phased implementation plan that includes testing, rollback procedures, and clear communication. 5. Engage relevant stakeholders throughout the process to ensure buy-in and address concerns. 6. Document all changes meticulously for audit and future reference. 7. Establish ongoing monitoring and review mechanisms to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance. Question 17. What factors determine the most effective combination of role-based access control, RBAC, attribute-based access control, ABAC, access control lists, ACL, and privilege escalation policies to secure sensitive network resources within a regulated U.S. financial institution? Option A. The availability of specific vendor solutions for access control and the ease of configuring static role assignments. Option B. The specific job functions of users, the context of access requests, the sensitivity of the data being accessed, and the defined procedures for temporary elevated permissions. Option C. The historical access patterns of users and the implementation of broad, permissive access controls to simplify management. Option D. The total number of users in the organization and the desire to implement the most complex access control model available. The correct answer is B. The specific job functions of users, the context of access requests, the sensitivity of the data being accessed, and the defined procedures for temporary elevated permissions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security, balancing granular access control with operational efficiency and compliance. The difficulty lies in designing and implementing an authorization model that effectively prevents privilege escalation, while remaining manageable and adaptable to evolving business needs and regulatory requirements. The risk of misconfiguration leading to unauthorized access or denial of service is significant, demanding a thorough understanding of access control principles and their practical application. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a layered security strategy that leverages RBAC as the primary mechanism for assigning permissions based on job functions, complemented by ABAC for dynamic, context-aware authorization decisions. Access control lists, ACL, are used for specific resource-level permissions, and robust processes for privilege escalation requests are enforced. This methodology aligns with best practices for secure system design and is implicitly supported by general principles of data protection and system integrity, which are foundational to many regulatory frameworks governing information security. By defining roles, attributes, and granular policies, organizations can enforce the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of modern security, thereby minimizing the attack surface and reducing the likelihood of unauthorized access or privilege escalation. This approach ensures that access is granted based on a combination of identity, context, and need, providing a more sophisticated and secure alternative to static, role-only assignments. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on RBAC without considering context or dynamic attributes creates a rigid system prone to overprivileging users. This can lead to regulatory compliance issues if sensitive data is accessible to individuals who do not have a legitimate business need, even if they hold a specific role. It fails to address situations where a user's access needs to change based on factors like time of day, location, or the specific data being accessed, increasing the risk of privilege escalation through social engineering or compromised credentials. Implementing ABAC as the sole mechanism without a clear RBAC foundation can lead to an overly complex and difficult-to-manage system. Sheer volume of attributes and policies can become unmanageable, increasing the likelihood of misconfigurations and unintended access. This complexity can also make auditing and compliance reporting challenging, potentially violating regulatory requirements for clear accountability and access logging. Using only ACLs for all access control decisions is highly inefficient and unscalable for large organizations. It results in a flat, unmanageable permission structure that is difficult to audit and maintain. This approach often leads to the granting of broad permissions to overcome administrative overhead, directly contradicting the principle of least privilege and increasing the risk of privilege escalation and noncompliance with data protection regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a thorough understanding of the organization's assets, data sensitivity, and regulatory obligations. The design of an authorization model should prioritize the principle of least privilege. This involves identifying distinct job functions and mapping them to roles RBAC. Then, consider dynamic factors that influence access needs and implement attribute-based policies, ABAC, to refine these permissions. Finally, use ACLs for specific resource-level controls where necessary. Crucially, establish a formal, audited process for requesting and approving temporary or permanent privilege escalations, ensuring that such requests are justified, time-bound, and approved by appropriate authorities. Regular review and auditing of access controls are essential to maintain security posture and compliance. Question 18. When evaluating the implementation of a security information and event management (SIEM) solution for a mid-sized financial services organization operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks, which deployment and configuration strategy would best ensure effective threat detection and compliance while managing operational overhead? Option A. Implement a cloud-native SIEM solution with a fully managed service, allowing it to automatically ingest all data and apply pre-configured threat intelligence feeds without any custom rule development or tuning, assuming the vendor's default settings are sufficient for all security needs. Option B. Deploy the SIEM to ingest all available log data from every system and device within the organization immediately, without initial prioritization, and configure a broad set of generic correlation rules to capture a wide range of potential events. Defer tuning and integration with other security tools until after the initial data ingestion is complete. Option C. Implement a phased deployment model, starting with critical network devices and core applications, and gradually integrating other data sources based on risk assessment and compliance requirements. Configure correlation rules to focus on high-fidelity alerts and establish a regular tuning schedule to minimize false positives and negatives. Integrate with existing IDS/IPS and endpoint detection solutions for enriched event data. Option D. Focus the SIEM configuration exclusively on compliance reporting requirements, ingesting only the logs mandated by relevant financial regulations, and disabling advanced threat detection features to simplify management. Avoid integration with other security tools to maintain a clear separation of duties. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased deployment model, starting with critical network devices and core applications, and gradually integrating other data sources based on risk assessment and compliance requirements. Configure correlation rules to focus on high-fidelity alerts and establish a regular tuning schedule to minimize false positives and negatives. Integrate with existing IDS/IPS and endpoint detection solutions for enriched event data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in SIEM implementation, balancing the need for comprehensive threat detection with the practical constraints of resource availability and data management. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions about SIEM deployment models and configuration that align with organizational security objectives and regulatory compliance without overwhelming the system or incurring unnecessary costs. Careful judgment is required to prioritize data sources, define appropriate correlation rules, and establish effective tuning processes. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-based deployment. This involves identifying critical assets and high-priority threats first, ensuring that the SIEM provides immediate value and addresses the most significant security risks. Integrating with existing security tools like firewalls and IDS/IPS is crucial for a holistic security posture, enabling richer context for alerts and automated response capabilities. Tuning the SIEM to reduce false positives and negatives is an ongoing process that directly impacts its effectiveness and operational efficiency, ensuring that security analysts can focus on genuine threats. This approach aligns with the principle of proportionality in security investments and operational management, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to achieve the greatest security benefit. While specific U.S. regulations are not explicitly mentioned for this exam, the general principles of due diligence and risk management are universally applicable in cybersecurity, implying a need to demonstrate reasonable security measures. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on ingesting all available data without a clear strategy for analysis or correlation is professionally unacceptable. This leads to data overload, increased storage and processing costs, and a high volume of noise that can obscure real threats. It fails to demonstrate due diligence in managing security resources effectively. Another incorrect approach that neglects regular SIEM tuning and rule refinement results in a system that quickly becomes outdated and ineffective. This can lead to missed threats or an overwhelming number of false positives, hindering the security team's ability to respond to actual incidents. Such a failure to maintain the SIEM operational readiness could be seen as a lapse in professional responsibility. A third incorrect approach that fails to integrate the SIEM with other security tools creates data silos and limits the SIEM ability to provide comprehensive threat intelligence. This fragmentation of security information reduces the overall effectiveness of the security program and can lead to slower incident response times. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the organization's threat landscape, risk appetite, and available resources. A structured approach, starting with defining clear objectives for the SIEM, followed by a phased deployment and continuous optimization, is essential. Prioritizing data sources based on their security value and regulatory relevance, developing robust correlation rules, and establishing a systematic tuning process are critical steps. Furthermore, fostering collaboration between security operations, IT infrastructure, and compliance teams ensures that the SIEM implementation meets diverse organizational needs and regulatory expectations. Question 19. Governance review demonstrates a significant increase in identified vulnerabilities across the network infrastructure, coupled with an uptick in sophisticated social engineering attempts targeting employees. The security team is tasked with recommending a strategic approach to address these evolving threats within the existing budget constraints. Which of the following approaches best aligns with a robust and compliant security posture? Option A. Focus solely on patching all identified software vulnerabilities, as this is the most direct way to reduce the attack surface, and defer any significant investment in social engineering defense until a major incident occurs. Option B. Implement a comprehensive, risk-based remediation plan that prioritizes vulnerabilities and social engineering defenses based on their potential impact on critical business operations and data confidentiality, while also investing in ongoing employee security awareness training. Option C. Immediately deploy the latest intrusion detection and prevention systems to counter all newly identified network vulnerabilities, and mandate a company-wide password reset to mitigate potential credential compromise. Option D. Allocate the majority of the security budget to developing custom threat intelligence feeds to proactively identify novel malware strains, and consider social engineering threats as a secondary concern to be addressed only if they directly lead to a confirmed breach. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive, risk-based remediation plan that prioritizes vulnerabilities and social engineering defenses based on their potential impact on critical business operations and data confidentiality, while also investing in ongoing employee security awareness training. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity governance, balancing proactive threat intelligence with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the need for demonstrable compliance. The difficulty lies in prioritizing remediation efforts when faced with a broad spectrum of identified vulnerabilities and potential threats, each with varying degrees of impact and likelihood. A key challenge is translating raw threat data into actionable security policies and investments that align with regulatory expectations and business objectives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a risk-based methodology, directly aligning with the principles of most cybersecurity regulatory frameworks, including those relevant to the CCNP security exam scope. This approach prioritizes vulnerabilities and threats based on their potential impact on the organization's critical assets and services, and the likelihood of exploitation. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, by focusing resources where they will provide the greatest security benefit and reduce the most significant risks. Regulatory compliance often mandates a risk assessment and management process, ensuring that security controls are proportionate to the identified risks. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to protecting sensitive data and systems, which is a core tenet of cybersecurity governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach might involve solely focusing on the sheer volume of identified vulnerabilities without considering their exploitability or potential impact. This is a failure of risk management, as it can lead to wasted resources on low-impact issues while critical threats remain unaddressed. Ethically and regulatorily, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting organizational assets and data, potentially violating compliance requirements that mandate risk-based security measures. Another incorrect approach could be to prioritize remediation based on the perceived trendiness of a threat, e.g., focusing heavily on a new ransomware strain without assessing its relevance to the organization's specific environment. This is a reactive and potentially inefficient strategy that neglects a thorough understanding of the organization's unique threat landscape and risk profile. It fails to meet the regulatory expectation of a tailored and effective security program. A third incorrect approach might be to ignore or deprioritize insider threats due to their perceived difficulty in detection or mitigation. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as many compliance frameworks explicitly require organizations to address internal risks. Neglecting insider threats leaves the organization vulnerable to data breaches and other malicious activities originating from within, which can have severe legal and reputational consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding the organization's critical assets and data. 2. Continuously monitoring the threat landscape for relevant threats. 3. Conducting regular vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. 4. Performing a comprehensive risk assessment that considers both the likelihood of a threat and its potential impact. 5. Prioritizing remediation efforts based on the risk assessment, focusing on the highest risk items first. 6. Implementing a layered security strategy, defense in depth. 7. Regularly reviewing and updating security policies and procedures based on evolving threats and organizational needs. 8. Ensuring that all security activities are documented and can demonstrate compliance with relevant regulations and standards. Question 20. System analysis indicates that a large enterprise security operations center, SOC, is experiencing significant alert fatigue and is struggling to efficiently identify and respond to genuine security threats. The SOC team is responsible for network monitoring, system monitoring, security log analysis, threat hunting, and vulnerability scanning. To optimize their processes and improve threat detection capabilities, which of the following approaches would represent the most effective and professionally sound strategy? Option A. Shift all resources exclusively to reactive incident response, discontinuing proactive threat hunting and vulnerability scanning activities to focus solely on addressing alerts as they are generated. Option B. Increase the volume of log data collected from all network devices and endpoints, and implement a brute force log analysis strategy to manually review all incoming security events for any potential signs of malicious activity. Option C. Implement a risk-based alert prioritization system that correlates network and system events with threat intelligence feeds, focusing threat hunting efforts on anomalies and high-confidence indicators, and integrating vulnerability scan results into the alert triage process. Option D. Prioritize network monitoring and intrusion detection system, IDs, alerts above all other security monitoring activities, while deferring comprehensive system monitoring and log analysis to a later, unspecified date. The correct answer is C. Implement a risk-based alert prioritization system that correlates network and system events with threat intelligence feeds, focusing threat hunting efforts on anomalies and high-confidence indicators, and integrating vulnerability scan results into the alert triage process. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security operations, optimizing the efficiency and effectiveness of security monitoring processes without compromising compliance or increasing risk. The professional challenge lies in balancing resource constraints, personnel, tools, time, with the imperative to detect and respond to threats promptly and accurately. Careful judgment is required to select monitoring strategies that yield the highest return on investment in terms of threat detection and risk reduction, while adhering to established security, best practices, and potential regulatory mandates for log retention and analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a data-driven, risk-based methodology. By focusing on high-fidelity alerts and known threat indicators, security teams can reduce alert fatigue and ensure that critical events are not overlooked. This aligns with the principle of proactive security, aiming to identify and mitigate threats before they cause significant damage. Furthermore, a structured approach to threat hunting, informed by threat intelligence and anomaly detection, is crucial for uncovering sophisticated or novel attacks that may evade signature-based detection. This methodical process ensures that security investments are directed towards the most impactful areas, leading to a more resilient security posture. An incorrect approach that relies solely on broad, unrefined log collection and analysis without prioritization would lead to an overwhelming volume of data, making it difficult to discern genuine threats from noise. This inefficiency can result in missed critical alerts, increasing the organization's vulnerability. Ethically and regulatorily, this could be problematic if it leads to a failure to detect and report security incidents as required by applicable frameworks, or if it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting sensitive data. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on reactive incident response, without proactive threat hunting or vulnerability scanning, leaves the organization exposed to unknown threats. This reactive stance is less effective in preventing breaches and can lead to longer dwell times for attackers. From a compliance perspective, a lack of proactive vulnerability management can be seen as a failure to meet reasonable security standards, potentially leading to regulatory penalties if a breach occurs due to unaddressed vulnerabilities. Finally, an approach that neglects system monitoring in favor of network-centric security would miss critical indicators of compromise originating from within the systems themselves, such as malware execution or unauthorized configuration changes. This oversight creates blind spots in the security posture and can hinder effective incident investigation and remediation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of assessment, implementation, and refinement. This includes 1. Understanding the organization's threat landscape and risk appetite. 2. Identifying critical assets and data that require the highest level of protection. 3. Selecting and configuring monitoring tools to collect relevant data efficiently. 4. Establishing clear processes for alert triage, investigation, and response. 5. Implementing regular threat hunting exercises and vulnerability assessments. 6. Continuously evaluating the effectiveness of monitoring strategies and adapting them based on new threats and organizational changes. 7. Ensuring all activities align with relevant security policies and regulatory requirements.